And nation-building hearings will resume tomorrow, and this time those accused or adversely affected by submissions and testimonies earlier in the process will be afforded the right to reply. Joining me is the Cricket Ombudsman, who will submit the final report to CSA, Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza. Advocate Ntsebeza, welcome to The Full View. Thanks for being with us. Are you happy with the process thus far as it's unfolded?
Well, I'm not so sure whether I would use the word happy, but I'm not unhappy. Because up to this point, we have had only one side of the version what Cricket South Africa has been about in the last 30 years, insofar as transformation, whatever one means by transformation, has been is concerned on the basis of gender and on the basis of race. You will have known that in July, August, we heard several complaints or several submissions, then put it in that neutral word, from people who came and told of stories that happened to them, and mentioning several people at all levels of Cricket South Africa to their detriment. And I then decided that in order to be fair in this process, I must now hear those who had been mentioned at detriment. So the next fortnight is intended to provide that platform.
So, Advocate, how do you guard against the hearings descending into a slanging match, a he said, she said, I'm aggrieved, you're aggrieved, everyone, and respect the process and what it's meant to do and see it through to the end?
Well, I mean, I've been trying all the time, and I'm sure if you go to your own archive at the SABC, you will know that right from the start, I emphasize that this is a process which is intended primarily to establish what happened in the past. Because, I mean, we're talking about a 8-year period from 1991, when the union was achieved in cricket. All sorts of cricket bodies, African, Indian, colored, white. There was this commitment in 1990 to have a union of all the cricketing, institutions. And 30 years later, I think those who are in the management of cricket in Cricket South Africa said, wait a minute, let's look at what has been achieved. And you heard in July, August this year, that there were deep-seated, very deep-seated, feelings of people who felt that they had been victimized, that in spite of union, Cricket South Africa is not what it ought to be. And having heard all of that, and this was heard in public, I felt that there is a need within the strictures of time that we have been mandated by Cricket Law, Cricket South Africa. But there was a need for us to hear all sides of the story, which is why the next forum is dedicated to hear those who were mentioned to that data, coming forward to say, wait a minute. Those who came to you and said A, B, C, D, they omitted to say E, F, G. Or, though you have fed a tissue of life, or we don't think we did anything. So this is an opportunity within the strictures of time for those who are mentioned here to come forward and give South Africa a balanced view of what happened since.
And it seems like it's just the tip of the iceberg, but you say there are strictures of time, and it's limited now to the cases that have been mentioned, and then it's the reply to those cases by people who... What are you listening for? And also, because it's been broadcast to the public, what should the public be listening for, and what should they be concentrating on?
The public, in my view, would be listening into what the rebuttal of what was mentioned in July, August is. The public, I want to believe, was shocked to have heard the stories that the various cricketers at all levels, whether it was at the level of selectors, level of players, whatever level. I'm talking about myself. Some of the stories that I heard were quite heartrending. But then, it's not my, position to give judgment without hearing the other side. My training as a lawyer, if nothing else, is that you will need to be able to come to a conclusion only after you have heard all sides of the story. And that is why this fortnight is created for those stories too. But let me tell you this, my brother. I indicated to the board when I was first approached for this job that if it were to me, if it were left to me, I would have needed much more time than I have been given. Because once you start an inquiry, then you allow all sorts of allegations to be made, to which they have to be some, rebuttal or responses. For instance, our process has not even allowed or limited cross-examination, which is what should, in ordinary circumstances, be happening. For instance, in the Maracana Commission of Inquiry, in which I participated, representing several families, Judge Falam and his commissioner allowed limited cross-examination. We have, we have not been able to do so yet for time. But I have decided, the Ombudsman, that at least if there have been allegations that were made, and everybody now knows what allegations were, if we make provision for those who have been mentioned to their detriment to rebut the allegations made, or to say, look, we are sorry for what happened, and we are prepared to make amends in this or that other way. That will make my task easier. So, yes, this process is far from ideal, because I had indicated, for instance, when I was first engaged, that this is a process that would need something like 18 to 24 months to conclude. Because, otherwise you could have done a desktop research within the period that we were given. But, it's doable within the strictures that I've.
Absolutely. Advocates, tell us, with the Proteas competing in a World Cup, while the submissions are taking place, while inevitably there are going to be headlines and there's going to be a lot of dissection going on, it's an interesting dynamic. Do you consider how the team will be digesting the information that they hear?
I think the moment of truth arrives at a time for everybody, or at some time, moment of truth must arrive. there is never a right time for issues of social justice and nation building to happen. We will know in this country about the history, very tragic history of Nancy Cronje, who the whole world idolized, but was shown in an public inquiry to have had, some fault line in his character. It's a pity that tragically he left us. But there was a time came, as you know, when he felt that he must come and say some of the things that we never were part and parcel of cricket. This cricket, the sporting code of cricket. Now, obviously, there have been several inquiries. People wanted to know whether I'm going to be delving into match fixing and all of that. And I've had to indicate that it is not in terms of reference match fixing, even though it might impact what I'm doing. Secondly, that the strictures of time are such that it is not the kind of people that can know that extent that it needs to. So I have a situation where I need, at the end of the time that I've given, to come with a report that might probably assist the nation in moving ahead in a context of people having seen happening in cricket and in the spirit of reconciling those who feel victims and those who were treated. And that, for me, if that is achieved, that is something that the SABC project nation building.
Now, Advocate, there's still plenty of antagonism in the game. We hear stories, we hear terrible stories. We see it on social media. Camps divided, antagonism, victim naming, shaming, blaming, everything going on. Do you think that this process is going to help make things better, or is it going to divide? Are you optimistic?
Well, some of those who know me will know that I'm an eternal optimist. And I think, if I wasn't, I wouldn't have taken the job. First of all, I didn't need the job. I was not looking for a job, and I accepted being an ombudsman. But I felt that there's something that I can bring. And one of the things that I can bring involved is this experience that I got when I was involved in commissions, which were seeking to achieve more or less the exact same thing that we in this cricket SABC project are seeking to achieve. You will know that I served on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And for my sins, I was there seeking to find, ways in which South Africa would reconcile, where there would be reconciliation between the so-called perpetrators and the so-called victims. And even though some, and then a number of people do so, some of the people are debunking, the achievements of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think it's too early for anyone to make a pronouncement whether or not it contributes to what it intended to contribute. I am saying, to the extent that I mentioned, that this SJN is the TRC of cricket, that long after I have written my report, submitted it to those who are the authorities, people will begin to understand that this was something that needed to be done. As I say, up to this point, and I don't want to prejudge what my eventual decision is going to be as to what I will have had, not having had what, for instance, those who have been mentioned to that death are going to be saying in their submission. But what I've heard up to this point.
Exactly. Advocate, thank you so much for being with us. We are absolutely out of time. I could have spoken to you for another whole hour. We should devote that. Please stay in touch with us. We are going to follow up on the SJN hearings. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Profound, powerful times ahead for cricket, for sport in this country. Thank you very much for being with us. Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, we wait to see what happens. Right, so that was the Ombudsman of cricket in the country talking about the social justice and nation building hearings that will be entering phase 2 come Monday.